Um, Hi, everybody. I'm glad we could all meet in memory of Dan's life and honor his memory. My name's Lauren Miller, and I was one of Dan's sponsees and a very close friend. And I knew Dan from the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I wrote quite a bit here, but I'm going to just read a little and wing a lot. And there's a memorial service for him this Saturday at 5 o'clock at San Martin, so if you care to attend then, please join us then as well. This is all just my interpretation. None of this is factual, but this is how I saw Dan. Dan's primary church was the room of Alcoholics Anonymous, and his religion was simply God, good orderly direction from a group of drunks. His Bible was the big book of AA. God, AA, and literature became Dan's moral compass and helped build a new life beyond his wildest dreams. When Dan shared in a meeting, one-on-one or with sponsees, it was like E.F. Hutton was talking. If you remember those old E.F. Hutton commercials, everybody listened. The room got quiet and heads started nodding like that. And because you knew you were getting a dose of the truth. Dan didn't sugarcoat anything, and that's what I really loved most about him. I knew I was going to get a dose of the truth, and he was going to be eyes and ears when I couldn't really see or hear things the way they really were. And he helped get me through a lot of landmines in life. I will be eternally grateful, and he'll always be right here with me. For me personally, I never like to share immediately after Dan, because what would I possibly add to what he just commented on? So, I would wait for someone else to share and then maybe chime in a little later. In 2002, Dan had a pretty bad motorcycle accident. It was a near fatal accident. According to Dan, had it not been for his helmet, he would have been a goner. But he pulled through. God had other plans. I mean, Dan was definitely a miracle. Just all he endured in life, all the hardships and trauma, and how he and God transcended that. But he moved into my house in 2002. I was recently going through a divorce, and I had the room, and Dan needed a place to stay for 4 to 6 weeks for him. Turned into 11 and a half months. But you know what? It was great for Dan, and it was exactly what I needed at the time, because I had somebody from the program, to be with me, and it gave me an opportunity to be there for him. And so much went on during that time. First of all, my quiet life was completely interrupted. I mean, people were parading in and out all the time to visit Dan. It was like there was a royal coronation going on or something, people just coming, going, visiting him. When he didn't have visitors, he was constantly working that phone. And, it was really quite a sight to see. One of the other things was his surgeon, who I had recommended, because the guy was a trauma surgeon, and he was supposed to be really the best, and I still believe he was the best back at the time, wanted to amputate Dan's leg because he had a compound fracture, which is where the bone's sticking out of the skin, and bacteria gets in, and it can get terribly infected, and it can be, quite arduous to save and to cure. Anyhow, the guy wanted to amputate Dan's leg, and Dan tells him, I thought you're supposed to be some tremendous surgeon, some hotshot, and now you just want to amputate. And, that got the guy's goat, and he said, okay, you want me to save it? I'm going to work at it, but you're going to go through a hell of a lot of pain. And Dan went through the pain. The thing about it is I knew he was in pain. He was walking around my house with an IV pole and all kinds of antibiotics and fluids, and I never heard the guy complain once. Never heard him say, why me? Why did God allow this? That wasn't it. His focus was just on getting well, and I know he was grateful in his heart to have survived something like that. It was really just incredible. One of the other things was Dan was really in a lot of pain, tremendous pain. He had busted up his shoulder, ultimately had to have a shoulder replaced, which is supposed to be tremendously painful. And then he had it replaced the second time, like 15 years later. But he broke his wrist, he broke his other leg. So the doctors, even though they knew he was a recovering alcoholic and addict, they gave him OxyContin because they said, you're gonna absolutely need this. And he literally had a jar of it like this, and it was the highest potency. And I'd walk in that room several times a day, and I never saw that jar taper down. It was like those pills never budged. And I couldn't believe it. And I said, Dan, how do you do it? Because I was at work all day and other people were working, so he didn't have a lot of visitors at that time and could have wallowed in self-pity. That would be simple enough to do. And say, well, maybe I'll bite into one of these, being a former addict. He never did it, and I asked him about that, and I go, Dan, how did you do that? How did you manage not to do that? And he goes, lots of prayer, Lauren. And that was his answer to really all of life, whenever his back was against a wall, his answer was prayer and who's in charge, and he kept it real simple in that respect. And he taught me a tremendous lesson, which is indelibly imprinted on my heart. It's just incredible. He also endured other things. He went through Hep C treatment, and this is before they had all these now approved pills. And he was taking interferon, which is brutal, absolutely brutal, can cause severe depression. Most people drop off the treatment plan. And because the side effect is depression, and Dan got the side effect, but he didn't trail off. And this is only with a 20% cure rate, and he was one of the 20%. Go figure, right? Who's in charge? And he went through so much. I know his childhood story. He had a rough start in life. He lost his mother at age 7. He lost his father at age 10. He was separated from his siblings, and and it was just a rough start to life. But again, Dan eventually found the rooms of AA, found God, found the fellowship, and he rallied behind that. And the things that he exemplified were just beyond really words. Dan also had a life, of course, outside of AA. He had a wonderful life. Dan tells me at age 63, now I only known Dan as a bachelor, he gets married at age 63. He tells me he's getting married. And I said, what? He was the quintessential bachelor, right? He had his bachelor pad, but he got married at age 63, and he found, a tremendous happiness, and couldn't have found a better partner in life, who saw him through to the end, and who he loved tremendously. They got to share a lot of cruises together, which brought joy to Dan's life. Sadly, he was supposed to go on a cruise the day after he passed. He was really looking forward to it, but that didn't come to fruition. He had dogs that he loved. When I'd walk him into his house, dogs would bark and greet him, and he'd go, "Get away, beast, get away!" Dan in that gruffy voice, and he loved helping veterans. That was really probably the thing that brought him as much joy as AA, is his voc rehab and finding veterans jobs, and especially the ones who were mentally ill and behind the 8 ball a little bit. He would assist them in work, and he'd bring a couple by my office, and I said, I don't have anything, Dan. He goes, well, clean your parking lot. I said, okay. You know, and I'd write him a check. You know, so, you know, he got his master's degree later in life. This is a guy who dropped out of high school and ultimately got his GED. But his intelligence level was so high. You know, he had the raw intelligence. He just had a rough start out of the starting gate. And, but God knows he made up for it. You know, when he set his mind to something, it was as good as completed. His labor of love was building the house in the Poconos Mountains with his brother Bernie. You know, he bitched about it a little bit, but you know, he loved that place until it was time to let it go. And of course, he loved his family, his siblings, his niece, great niece and nephews, and you know, extended family. And he loved everybody in AA. He loved everybody. I'm positive. You know, I loved Sam Martin. So, you know, we should all really give thanks and be grateful for, you know, the love that Dan exuded and the example that he set. I'm going to end there, but I want to finish with just a prayer that I found. This is actually out of a Jewish prayer book, and this prayer deals with death and mourning. And it says, how can we understand death? What can we know of death? We who cannot understand life. We study the seed in the cell, but the power deep within them will always elude us. Though we cannot understand, we accept life as the gift of God. Yet death, life's twin, we face with fear. But why be afraid? Death is a haven to the weary, a relief for the sorely afflicted. We are safe in death as in life. There is no pain in death, there is only pain in the living, as they recall shared loves, and as they themselves fear to die. Calm us, O God, when we cry out in fear and our grief. Turn us anew toward life and the world. Awaken us to the warmth of human love that speaks to us of you. We shall fear no evil as we affirm your kingdom of life.
Hey, Doc.